So this video is going to be looking at the, well, to be honest, completely long-winded section of Tacitus talking about the Piso conspiracy. So strap yourselves in, guys, for a confusing conspiracy just because of the sheer number of people. You'll be pleased to know you do not need to know the ins and outs of all the different people who are involved in the conspiracy. As long as you have a broad understanding of who the figurehead is and the sort of the range of people, you'll be absolutely fine. But this being Tacitus and his love of detail, he's going to tell us every single person who likes to be involved. So we will look at some key people in terms of their specific reasonings for the conspiracy. And then the source very thankfully drifts across to how it ended and then the treatment of the conspirators. Okay, so what we do have is that it's a really widespread conspiracy. So you've got senators, knights, soldiers, and even women are involved, not just because they hate Nero, but also because they really like this guy called Gaius Piso, hence the conspiracy being named after Piso. Sorry, my cat just being a bit weird. Okay. So because of his own kind of personality, many family distinction united behind him. The people really liked him because he was seen as being really virtuous, and he spoke really well in defence of citizens who've been in the law courts, and he was just kind of like a really nice guy, it appears. So he doesn't seem to be kind of his idea. So Tacitus says the beginning of the conspiracy was not from his own wish, but it does seem to be that these people throw their support behind him to be sort of to replace Nero. So as you can see from the next bit, I use a few multiple different colours to kind of specify a few key people. So we have a huge range. So we have Suburius Flavus. It's got some brilliant Roman names coming up, by the way. He was a member of the Praetorian Guard, so that's obviously quite dangerous. He's part of the army. We have a centurion, Sulpicius Asper. We have Aeneas Lucanus, Plautius Lateranus, who just really hate him. Lucanus is also known as Lucan for short, which is helpful. So he has private motives because Nero was stifling his poems. Just such an oddly specific reason to kill an emperor. You don't like the poems and you're not allowing me to speak publicly. But anyway, that's his specific reason for it. So they have Lateranus, he was also been a to be consul, was brought to the cause because he wants to help the empire, which is a pretty good reason to do it. We then have Flavius, oh gosh, let me think about this, Scavinius, got there actually, Afranius Quintianus, who are both senators. Okay, cool. And specifically, the Quint guy, I can't pronounce again, had also been attacked in a poem that was written by Nero. So he is really angry with Nero. So again, we have members of the army, we have senators, we have women, we have knights, we have the kind of everybody. So these are the core group of people, I guess. And then they also bring in this happy group of people. So Claudius Senecio, Severius Proculus, sorry, my Latin's not brilliant, Volcacius Ararchius, Julius Algerinius. I don't know why I'm reading them all to you. I've now started, so I'm going to carry on. Monetius Gratus, Antonius Metallus, and Marcius Festius. So they're all knights. Okay, so you've got the knights. And Senecio, I think I've said it wrong the first time, is sort of within the imperial kind of, not family, but, you know, grouping in the palace. Sorry, I can't think of the right phrasing there. We also then have Gavius Silanus, he's going to become important later, and Statius Prosumus, who were tribunes in the Praetorian Guard again. And we have other centurions, Maximus, straightforward Maximus, Scacarus, and Venetus Paulus. Okay. And it's believed that the main strength of the conspiracy is Fenius Rufus. Again, nice straightforward name. Cool. Whew. Right, so like I said, huge number of people who get involved in this particular conspiracy. So this... I don't know if you can hear my cat running around in the background. I hope he can't. I don't know what he's doing. He's being absolutely nuts. Anyway, so Rufus basically becomes involved. Hang on, let me just read it. Most persons are convinced plotters the command of the Praetorian Guard to send this to themselves. Right, sorry. So there starts to be some rumours about this a conspiracy is forming, and as a result of it, it causes the conspirators to basically get a bit alarmed and to start to be reluctant to set a time and a place. So the conspiracy kind of like becomes really hesitant, and it starts to drag out. Okay, so that's what this bit also says here. And then we get a woman called Epicharis becomes involved, and who hears about the conspiracy somehow and starts to animate and upbraid the conspirators. So she starts to egg them on. Okay, and she made an effort to undermine the loyalty of the fleet officers at Mycenium and to implicate them in the plot. So she starts trying to get the navy on side as well. So again, the conspiracy has got loads of people, and it's also widening now to other parts of the armed forces. We then have Volusius Proculus, who was actually one of the people involved in the assassination of Nero's mother. So we have come across this guy before. And he disclosed what his services Nero had been and how thankless they proved. So he's just annoyed because he feels kind of taken for granted, and proceeded to complaints to a declared intention of settling the account. So like, you give me the opportunity, I will help. And Nero has treated me badly and he doesn't appreciate me, and I just want revenge on him as a result of it. Okay. The lady Epicharis also says nothing left for the Senate or for the people. So the idea that the Senate's being kind of like overlooked and treated badly by Nero, same with the people. And so this idea of it's a wider issue of like freedom for the people in Rome as well. Okay. I told it's a little bit complicated. So the plotters initially decide to try and commit the murder at Baiae in a villa that was belonging to Piso. Piso says, no, not in my house. Kind of understandable. And he suggests it's better to do it in Rome, in the palace that everyone hates, because it's a gold palace, etc. And they should be seen to do it in public, so the deed is for the public good. So in public, not in hiding, not in my house. So he also had some misgivings that Silanus was trying to become emperor. So he's starting to maybe slightly distance himself away from the conspiracy because he's concerned about some of the motivations of some of the key people, and understandably doesn't want it in his house. Maybe he didn't want to clean the rug, I don't know. I'm joking. He wanted to do it in public because then the public would support him. So eventually they decide to do it on the day of the Circensian Games. Fine. And the plot would take place in such way. So Lateranus would ask for money because he needs, burden of debt, etc. And he would then sort of, fall to the emperor's feet and like, oh, please give me money, and then would trip him up, which is quite amusing in itself, just, overturn him and then pin him down to the floor. And then once he's pinned to the floor, because he was seen as being like the biggest person, the tribunes, centurions, and anyone else who was daring enough would run up and do him to death, i.e. stab him to death. In the meantime, Piso was then go to the temple of Ceres, and then he would be summoned by Prefect Phineas and others to the carriage of the camp, and then he would be made, emperor or something. So that's the basic plot. It's quite a straightforward plot, and when you get to the heart of it, pin him down, stab him. In Rome, preferably. Okay? Hopefully everybody is relatively clear. You'll notice that, again, he drops in the names in and out. Again, don't worry too much about who's doing what bit. The key thing is they're going to put Piso in place, and then end of Nero, everybody's happy. So we have a mixture of ranks, classes, ages, sexes, rich and poor, which is obviously really important to show the how widespread, the conspiracy was. Somehow, initially, it's all kept in secrecy, which Tacitus is really surprised by because it is so widespread. But then, inevitably, becomes a betrayal, and it's this guy who betrays them, not necessarily on purpose, but he betrays them. So he has a long conversation with this guy called Natalis, and he starts basically behaving in a really weird way that makes people think, what is this guy up to? So he takes a dagger and says it needs to be sharpened, so he gives that to his freedman. Okay. He then starts to give his favourite slaves liberty, and everyone's thinking, why is he suddenly doing all this? At the same dinner, he's really moody, and he's clearly deep in thought because he's thinking about the conspiracy. And then he starts to say, we need some bandages for wounds. and there's going to be some hemorrhages, and you know, you need to get this all ready. And everyone's just like, what is this guy preparing for? Doesn't sound like a fun evening. So there's also something is going on, and it sort of seems to be that maybe he was kind of thinking about this treason, and there's an element of conscience, and maybe he's trying to kind of accidentally giving it away. So he then speaks to his wife, which is understandable because he's got it on his mind, and it's then kind of is then informed upon. Not his wife, I should point out. It's this guy. So the freedman, here we go, scroll down, goes to the gardens where Nero is. And he sort of says, let me in. Everyone's like, oh, I don't know, it's pretty dangerous, please let me in. So then Nero's Nero's freedman, that guy who I cannot pronounce, was then taken and then put in front of Nero, and that's when the plot is then told to Nero. He then shows the weapon. Remember, he's been told to sharpen its edges. He's like, look, here is a weapon, they're going to kill you. And as a result, Skyvinius is then brought to Nero by soldiers, and he starts to defend himself, saying the weapon charged against him had long been regarded with veneration by his family. So everyone likes the dagger. I'm just getting it sharpened. Why would you not? It's a really nice dagger. And basically, the freedman had then kind of nicked it. And yes, he's sort of previously given loads of money to freedmen, but now he's just doing it more because, you know, he's got debts and he's trying to get rid of the money, so the money won't taken off his freedmen or something. Doesn't really make sense, that defence. And basically he's kind of going, you know, I'd never asked for bandages, so this is completely untrue. I didn't do it. So he then says, you know, this freedman is really untrustworthy and he's a villain, all the rest of it, and this is all ridiculous, basically. And unfortunately for him, his then wife kind of speaks up and sort of says, well, you know, Antonius Navellus had a long secret interview with Scavinius and both on intimate terms with Piso. And then suddenly everyone's like, hang on a minute. I think I might have did a typo earlier. Okay. Yeah, I should say Navellus, not Natulus. Confusing. There we go. But anyway, so then it starts to kind of more informers start coming forward. So Navellus is therefore then summoned, and let me get the name right. This guy, Scaevinius, and Navellus are then questioned separately, understandably, and their answers don't match, and therefore everyone starts to get really, really suspicious. I think it's supposed to be Natulus. Hang on, I'm just double checking. That should be Natulus, which must mean it's Natulus there. Sorry. Anyway, so then they're sort of dragged away to prison, and then they can see they're going to be tortured, and that's when they broke down. And that's when the conspiracy really comes out into the open because of this fear of torture. So Natulus takes the lead because he knows the most, and he admits the case against Piso, and then he names Seneca, who was one of Nero's tutors as a child and was part of the imperial household and could have kept a little bit of a tight rein on him. Now, there is no evidence that Seneca had taken part in this conspiracy, so why he's named is interesting. They think it's one of two reasons. So maybe he had acted as some kind of intermediate between the two, but again, there's no evidence for that. Or was it to try and kind of help himself because Nero didn't like Seneca anymore and therefore was looking for an opportunity to get rid of him, and that's why he named Seneca, because that would make Nero happy if he mentioned it. Okay. Scavenius divulges to everybody else. Okay, this is when it starts getting like a bit sort of deathy. I'm just a bit of a heads up on this one. So then we have Lucan, Quintanius, and Senecio denies the charges initially, and eventually they're bribed with the promise that they're not going to be punished. So they then give the names of everybody else, and they all start to be kind of like rounded up and questioned. Now, Nero then remembers that the lady that we mentioned earlier who was trying to get the fleet on side of the conspiracy was in custody. So he orders her to be racked, so that's like stretched and tortured, etc. However, no matter what they did to her, in terms of lash of fire, she would not sort of say anything. And one day they're dragging her back to a chair for, you know, the continuing of being tortured. She's been tortured so much, I didn't highlight it, but it's pretty grim, that her arms and her legs are basically dislocated, which is horrible. So despite the fact that her arms and legs are dislocated, she manages to get a rope, which is kind of tied around her middle, and not rope, sorry, it's a breast band, so like the equivalent of a Roman bra, I guess, but like, you know, a piece of fabric. So she manages to undo that, ties a noose, and basically kills herself. And because she doesn't want to give the conspiracy away. And Nero's basically terror starts to grow because other people are also not talking. Like Luke and these guys don't admit anyone. Hang on. Let me highlight that because that's quite important. So the conspirators are doing, some of them are kind of telling what's going on, other ones they are keeping it to themselves, and that's when Nero starts to get really, really worried. So, about halfway through, guys, he then lays the capital under a species of arrest. So in other words, he starts arresting left, right and centre in order to get to the root of the conspiracy. So there's continuous columns of manacled men, like men in chains, dragged and deposited at the garden door, so they've been taken to the palace. When they entered to plead their cause, cheerfulness towards a plotter, a chance conversation, an unforeseen meeting, an appearance at a banquet or spectacle in his company was taken as crimes. So basically, the evidence against these people is so minor, but it's given them Nero the excuse to have them arrested in order to try and get to the bottom of how many people were involved in the conspiracies. Now, Rufus, who was seen as the person who was most able to actually, you know, do the deed, has not yet been named. Cool. So he's all right for now. Okay. Now, while people were being arrested, they sort of, some people who haven't been arrested yet, urge Piso to make his way to the camp or to go to the roster, so that would be in the forum to give a speech, and basically to give a speech to the troops and the people, and basically to try and persuade them that they need to get rid of Nero, etc., etc., etc. And they sort of, I'm just reading the whole way through again. And the key things about this liberty, so how much honourably would he perish in the act of taking his country to his heart, of invoking help for liberty. So saying that's the reason why this is the reason they should give the people in order to get more support behind it. However, Piso's unmoved by this. Is like, no way am I doing that. So he then hides himself away, and he sort of knows someone's going to come and arrest him and just kind of waits for it. Now, as the troops arrive, he then, this is really gross, but severs the arteries of both arms. So there's like an artery, it's near your elbow, I think. And that's a very classic way for Romans to take their own lives. I don't know why I know this detail, but as you basically slice your arm and you bleed to death. It's really unpleasant. That saves him being arrested and then obviously then being an informer. Okay, so this is now, I'm going to be honest, when the murders really start kicking off. So we have Plautius Lateranus, who's then killed. He's done really quickly. He can't even say goodbye to his family, which is nice. The Seneca death is particularly cheery. Basically, Seneca sort of denies, obviously, you know, anything. So, you know, why would I say no to Piso? But we're just friends. It's nothing more than that. I'm literally not involved in this plot in the slightest, which is what was all that talking about there. Anyway, so the Tribune reports back to Nero's Privy Council, and Nero's really angry about how that basically Seneca's denying any involvement. He's just kind of friends with Piso, and why are you dragging me this into it? So then Nero demands that Seneca is prepared for a voluntary death, i.e. he's going to be given the option. He could, not given the option, sorry. He's thinking, is Seneca about to take his own life? And the officer says, no, it doesn't look like he's going to do so, blah, 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 blah. Because obviously, remember, and in Roman eyes, taking your own life was seen as more honourable than being executed. So often, particularly nobles, if they were going to be killed for a crime, they would rather take their own lives than be punished, because it would bring a loss of dignity for the family. So that's why Nero's asking, like, does it look like Seneca's going to take his own life? He's assured he's not, so that's when he says, right, okay, kill him. Have him executed. Fine. So there's this really, I'm not going to be honest, really quite boring section about Seneca and his last moments, where he's kind of giving a bit of a speech, which is like, I've done nothing wrong, look after my wife, blah, blah, blah. That's why I've not highlighted it. I've been a really good husband, haven't I? Be a good wife, don't kill yourself, etc., etc. So then they cut his arms, like I said previously, near the elbow, a single cut. However, this is really gruesome. Seneca's really old and tends to live a really frugal life, so he doesn't have a lot of fat, etc. So basically he bleeds, but bleeds really slowly. So they then cut the arteries behind his knees. and he's still dying really slowly, and it's all very sad. So he's slowly bleeding to death. Nero, at the same time, he was going to have Seneca's wife Paulina killed, but actually, well, tell her to commit suicide, take her own life, sorry. But then said she's going to be arrested. Okay, how kind of him. Seneca, in the meantime, is still slowly dying, which is really depressing. So he's just slowly bleeding to death, but not really bleeding to death. So they decide to poison him. So then he dies. He's gone. Oh, right, okay. So in the political bit is dealt with here. We then have the military side of things. So we're talking about the Praetorian Guard, stroke, Navy, etc. So that's when Rufus is finally named. So he's season bound at the Emperor's order, and essentially he's then executed. Fine. So the evidence, then destroys Fubrius Flavus. Okay. So he embraces his confession, and he's like, yeah, I'm going to have to take my opportunity. And he gives his reasons, and it's pretty fair reasons. I hate you. There's not a man in the country truer to you as long as you deserve to be loved. I began to hate you when you turned into the murderer of your mother and wife, a chariot driver, an actor, a fire racer. So he just hates him. And that's the reason why I've done it, so I don't care. And basically Nero takes this news the hardest because, no one likes to be told that the reason why they're going to kill you is because they just hate everything about you. And then execution is then given over to the tribune, Niger, and he's then killed. Fine, they dig a ditch, it takes too long, but they eventually kill him by chopping his head off, which is nice, which is what this bit basically talks about in here. We then have Sulpicius Asper, basically says, Nero asks him, why are you trying to kill me? And rejoined curtly, it was the only service that could be rendered to his many infamies. So, in other words, you deserved it. That's what he says. So he's then killed. Nero then waits for the consul Vestinius to be incriminated, but actually conspirators hadn't told Vestinius any of this. He wasn't involved in the plot. So because there's no charge or accuser against the consul, Nero, and it's a great quote, Nero turned to plain despotic force, which is brilliant, and basically turns into a tyrant, and basically goes to arrest him, I think is what it's talking about in here. And then, where is his name? I've forgotten now. So Vestinius locks himself in his bedroom and then cuts his own arteries, and then carries him off and plunges in hot water. Basically, being in water obviously makes you, especially hot water, makes you bleed quicker. So then he then dies. Everybody dies. Nero then says that Lucan needs to die. So again, cutting of arteries and all the rest of it, and he has a very painful, horrible death. So then we have this kind of overall what's going on. So we've got the city's filled with funerals. Yeah, because everybody's dying. Here for a killing of a son, there for a brother, a kinsman, or a friend. So this kind of shows the scope of what's gone on and the amount of executions that were happening because of this conspiracy. So one of the tribunes, so Solanius, although he's been acquitted, then kills himself. Statius Prozumus, sorry, it's an X, certified the pardon he received. So he's pardoned, and then he's really unhappy about it. Okay, I think basically he then takes his own life. Pompeius, Cornelius, Martilius, and loads of other people. Flavius Nepos, Statius Domitius, they're deprived of their rank, so they're stripped of their senatorial. Sorry, my sharp elbow. Rank, fine. Novius Priscus, who was friends of Seneca. Giletius Gallus, Aeneas Pollio were discredited, and they're put into exile, and some of their wives go with them, some of them don't. Rufius Crispinius are banished, because he does basically he's gotten rid of because he used to be the wife of Nero's wife. Oh my god, he's been married to Nero's wife Pompeia, so that got rid of him. We then have we're gonna try this one. Cluvidinius, there we go. Quietus. Julius Agrippa, Blitius Catulinus, Petronius Priscus, and Julius Altinius, basically go into exile in Greece. And again, some family members go with them and some others are not. We're nearly there, I promise. So now that we're all over, Nero held a meeting of the troops, understandable, because obviously there were members of the Praetorian Guard involved, and gives out loads of money. Nice. I know going around arresting people is going to be rewarded. And they're also given the price of grain at a lower rate, which is nice. He brings together the Senate and gives triumphal distinctions on varying people who served him well. So we have Petronius Turpilianus, a praetor, I think it's Coccius Nerva, I might be wrong on that pronunciation, if so it makes you chuckle either way, and Praetorian prefect Tigellanius. Lovely. We then have some consul insignia, so like the honours of being a consul, but not actually being a consul, are decreed to Nymphidius. Okay. I should point out there's bits in brackets and dots because we are missing parts of Tacitus's work, so we don't have sort of the full story. You'll be pleased to know. See, we're nearly there. I promise. God, it goes on forever, the source. Then Nero publishes an edict to the people and a collection in writing of the informations laid and the avowals of the condemned, i.e. he tells everybody what's happened in order to win support of them, I guess. Look how dangerous this conspiracy was. Look how close I was to being murdered. Isn't it terrible? And part of the reason is because there's loads of gossip that he was just kind of killing everybody because he was jealous of their standing. So he's like, no, actually, there's a giant conspiracy against me. So, I'm not actually just murdering people for the sheer hell of it, although there's probably an element of that going on as well. We then have offerings and thanks get voted to heaven and the sun. That's nice. The games where the conspiracy was supposed to happen is to be celebrated with increased number of horse races. Of course, horses, it's Nero. The month of April has been taken the name of Nero, which we don't do anymore. And there's also going to be a temple of safety. In other words, Nero's life has been saved and the safety of Rome is safe, blah, 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 blah. So it's going to be a temple for him, which is nice. We also then have a temple should be built to Nero the Divine out of public funds. But actually, Nero vetoes that. But this is seen as so people saw this as an example of like Nero becoming a god, and that's why Nero says no, because that would be ridiculous. And that's the end of the conspiracy, to be honest. So we have this really wide-ranging conspiracy involving all parts of society, including women, who basically are captured and informed and tortured, and slowly they all die. Seneca, who had some kind of control over Nero, so he treated him as a boy and was still then within the imperial household, is then removed. And this basically clears the way now for Nero to do whatever he wants, because his mother is dead and now Seneca is dead, and that is it. He can do whatever he likes. But again, this was a very serious conspiracy just because of the sheer scale and across society that it drew its supporters from.